So the mad lad, he did it. He finally got rid of her, because what we were speculating, possibly that she would get sacked, Suella Braverman would get sacked on possibly Wednesday, but it happened on the Monday, the 13th. This video should go out on the 14th. So yeah, it's been a interesting weekend, because we started off with a lot of speculation.
Is a potential scope for a reshuffle. This matters not just for the Home Secretary, but for the Prime Minister too, because we have seen a power struggle between Number 10 and the Home Office. This is now about the Prime Minister's authority, and any decision to sack or not to sack Suella Braverman will have political consequences.
See, I don't think Sunak has actually given a reason why he's gotten rid of her. And, you know, as kind of the journalist here, Ali Forsyth, I'm not sure how to pronounce her name here, points out, politics isn't just about the decisions you make, it's about the decisions you don't make. And that's a thing a lot of people fail to understand, not just over this, but over a range of issues. So, you know, that is a really good point she's made there, without sounding condescending, like, genuinely. So, she's gone. Suella Braverman's gone, so there's only one thing to say, really. But yeah, it started with this really weird op-ed she wrote, where she talked about hate marches. She talked about hate marches from the pro-Palestine people. There were a couple of issues with the pro-Palestine march, but nothing that bad, I think. There were, like, people with signs, I think a couple of chants, but you know, like, those chants get kind of mistaken because people are trying to kind of reclaim them. But, you know, we saw a lot of far-right goons kind of go and take the cenotaph effectively. A lot of the kind of military are very unhappy about it. And this is a thing that Suella Braverman really whipped up here. You know, she compared the pro-Palestine protest to the hate marches that they see in Northern Ireland, when the only major marches that happen in Northern Ireland are by unionists. So not only has she annoyed multiple different groups here, she's also annoyed British unionists, who, as Home Secretary, annoying people who are who see themselves as, you know, loyal to the Crown, is just really stupid, honestly. Like, the fact that she doesn't know much about Northern Ireland is very disturbing, and that's something journalists have pointed out here. When we go to, you know, one of the I think he's the head of the Met, one of the guys at the Met here, when he talked about the situation at the time on Saturday or Sunday, sorry, during the protest.
Dealing with two things. We're dealing with a counter-protest, and we're dealing with the main Palestinian march. The counter-protest arrived early this morning, just after 9 o'clock, and groups of several hundred arrived and seemed intent on confrontation and intent on violence. We've seen a number of arrests made. We've had arrests for possession of a knife, possession of a baton, possession of Class A drugs, and assault on an emergency worker. There are a number of groups within this counter-protest who have split off and seem intent on seeking confrontation with the main Palestinian march. And the policing operation at the moment is being effective in preventing that happening.
And, you know, we saw a load of far-right goons looking for a fight and fighting with police officers. And this really was the group that Suella Braverman helped her whip up, when these are the kind of people that definitely should be condemned. And she didn't really condemn them. She says the police deal with them in such a way, rightly so. But, you know, these people are thugs. To compare the pro-Palestine people to the far-right thugs makes no sense. And we saw a lot of anger over the kind of the stuff Suella Braverman was saying.
Sky News can reveal tonight is the true depth of the fury of people on both sides of this debate, revealed in messages sent between Conservative MPs and leaked to Sky News. Let's look at some of them. There was an exchange on a Conservative WhatsApp group that began with the veteran Conservative MP John Hayes. Now, he wrote that it was so sad to see the protests being allowed on the Remembrance weekend, wholly inappropriate, and we should speak for the law-abiding patriotic majority by saying no. So he is an ally of Suella Braverman.
And this is a guy here, John Hayes, saying they should not be allowed to be a protest on Remembrance Sunday, when I thought these soldiers died for our freedoms. Surely they died for our freedom to protest, no? So why would you, to honour these soldiers who have fallen for our freedom, take away people's freedoms, especially on that day? It makes absolutely no sense.
And he is backing her stance. But almost immediately, another former saying that by Tory MPs complaining about these marches, you're only going to inflame and attract groups such as the English Defence League and the far right. John Hayes hits back.
And that is exactly what happened.
they have been allowed by the chief constable, who could have requested that they get stopped. Then there was a message, a big stand was taken by a prominent Conservative MP. That's Bernard Jenkin. He's a Brexiteer, seen on the right of the party, and he then comes down forcefully against Suella Braverman. He says, am I the only Conservative MP who thinks that it is most unfortunate that the chief of the Met Police is being placed under public pressure from the government, which threatens to compromise public confidence in the operational independence? If he does not ban demonstrations, some will say he's given into political pressure. These conversations should be conducted in private without undermining public confidence in policing in London.
And you can see here the kind of stupidity of these MPs, not from Bernard Jenkin on this situation. But point being is, what they had said is, you're putting public pressure on the chief of the Met Police to make what is a political decision here, when the Met Police are meant to be independent of the government, in large part. Obviously they have to follow laws and stuff, but when it comes to them making certain judgments on which protests should and should not be allowed, that's mostly up to them. And so for Braverman to really get involved in, she created this issue. Let's not forget that she whipped this up into a culture war. She's been talking about hate marches for weeks. She created this monster, and ultimately it was this monster that ended up destroying her because she went too far. That's all the Conservative Party know how to do right now, at least elements of them. All they know is the culture war. That's all they had during Brexit, the culture war. And now that culture war's come back to bite them. There was another MP, a Tory MP, saying, conversations in private, that's not what we do anymore, which is just embarrassing. It's something from Question Time, which is just endless waffle. This clip of Suella Braverman really trying the patience of, this kind of... Braverman has consistently done this. She's constantly annoyed the Prime Minister. And, she's had fallings out of Sunak, things like over the Windsor Framework, and she decided not to go at that point, but she's been a constant thorn in his side by the statements she makes. And I think Rishi Sunak kept her because she was a good distraction from the economy, which is still flatlining, by the way, and it will continue to flatline, I think, up until 2025. And so I think the reason he kept her was she was a good distraction. The whole Rwanda policy, all of these other things, these culture wars that, she helped to kind of create and fed into, distracted everyone from what was, really a flatlining economy and a government that are completely inept. I think that's what she did really well, if I was ever going to give her any credit. This is the tweet about Northern Ireland, and this is what we're talking about, the situation in Northern Ireland where, it felt like they were being broadcast from a parallel universe where the Home Secretary does not know the difference between unionists and nationalists, because again, for the most part, the majority of the protests, these quote hate well, I'm not going to call them hate marches, I'll leave that to Big Suella, but point being is these marches were predominantly done by unionists. So for Braverman to come out and implicitly criticise the unionists doesn't make any sense. This kind of No Justice tweeting citing something which is talking about the counter protesters being the ones that are causing most of the damage, the ones that are chanting offensive things and causing all sorts of problems for the police. Who is surprised to see that the people who ruined Remembrance Sunday are the so-called patriots who were there to, quote, protect the cenotaph? Protect it from who? Because the only one it needed protected from was a bunch of goons. This from Lizzie Dearden, who works for The Independent, saying the Met Police used its powers to ban pro-Palestine marches, but not cenotaph defenders and far-right groups from Whitehall. When asked why the senior officer in charge of the operation said he thought they would not cause any disorder by themselves, but evidently they did. And this statement here, by themselves, what I think they were talking about is if the counter-protesters met, kind of saw the main Palestinian protesters in that area, but really, if they were going to block the cenotaph from the pro-Palestine protesters, they should have blocked it from everyone. But for whatever reason, they didn't. He said he feared disorder if pro-Palestinian groups and counter-protest, I think it's meant to be protesters, met, which the Met Police is geared to stop happening, which they botched that. They did a lot of, I think, good things, the Met Police, but they should have blocked the cenotaph completely from everyone, or all the protesters. This is... This is, Jeremy Hunt being asked about if he has confidence in the Met Police. He says yes. Do you have confidence in Braverman? He says the Prime Minister has confidence in Braverman, and I have nothing to add. So what, he's not saying I have confidence in her, but I have confidence in, the Prime Minister, who effectively does. And so, he's saying that, I believe in the Prime Minister who believed in Braverman. But it's kind of Weasley from Hunt. But at the same time, they didn't want to go on record and say anything, I think, to say they backed her, because that would make the Prime Minister's job even harder. And they didn't want to say to sack her, because ultimately that would also put more pressure on Sunak. So they used weasel words. And a lot of some of the Tory ministers who were kind of interviewed and asked questions did not explicitly back what Braverman was saying and explicitly back the Met Police. So Braverman completely failed on this one. Absolute failure. There's multiple ministers, although her fate was uncertain after Jeremy Hunt joined Ministerial Voices, distancing themselves from her views. And I think Oliver Dreary was another one, and there were a few others that did not back up what Suella Braverman was saying. The majority of half of Brits thought she should be sacked. Only 22% of people thought that she should have stayed on as Home Secretary.
Dangerous ground.
As Sonia Soda points out here, to have the Home Secretary openly criticising the police on an issue regarding a protest like this is genuinely mind-boggling. Like, the police, they can make mistakes, and if they do think there's some sort of bias there, they can get the police in front of select committees to explain the decisions they've made. But for the Home Secretary to do it in this way is just embarrassing, and she has undermined the right to freedom to protest, which they've done. The Tories have done consistently with the laws they have passed. And this person here, founder of the Res Republica, Philip Blond, saying Braverman appeals to a certain group of voters, the leadership doesn't, Sunak doesn't. And that might be another reason why he kept her around for so long, that she appeals to the far right, the potential reform voter, the reform UK voter. And now, by sacking her, he's made it much more difficult for him to get those voters on side, which I don't think he had much of a shot with anyways. I can see kind of them either staying home or voting reform, because, why would they vote Tory? The Tories have constantly talked about lowering immigration, constantly talked about stopping the small boats, have done nothing to achieve those two things. And again, this from Sonia Soda again, saying she expects the Conservative Party to lose the next election and for there to be a leadership challenge shortly after, which Braverman is pitching for. And in the words of Coffeezilla, it's a pitch, it's a pitch. I would have thought Braverman's ploy would be to trigger a leadership contest now and try and take power now from Sunak in order to become Prime Minister. That's the play that would make the most sense. Because either way, she'll be, if she doesn't try and seize power now, if she waits till after the election, she'll be a leader of opposition, and she won't get far, and she'll lose. She'll probably lose to Labour in 27 because she's a nutcase, and she'll be. They'll do a vote of no confidence because the Tories only give you one election. So for her to kind of make this calculation is ultimately stupid. There was a senior government source who said that Suella Braverman was going to get fired on Monday, and they were confident of that, and they were 100% correct. Whoever their source is was spot on. So unless that source was Rishi Sunak, this person definitely knew what they were talking about, which is kind of eerie, because other ministers had said, Suella Braverman is stupid. She's a totally useless minister and is making the mistake of believing in her own publicity. She's toast. And we have seen ministers like Priti Patel, who thought, she had a lot of clout in the Conservative Party. Everyone thought she had a lot of clout in the Conservative Party. And ultimately, where is she now? She's botching... she's saying stuff like Labour want to take the UK back into the UK. Like, honestly, it's just embarrassing. There were a lot of threats from Tory MPs saying, don't F with Suella. If you come for the Queen, the rooks, the knights, the pawns and the bishops will all stand in the way. Well, evidently, there was no one there, because nothing has happened. I've seen Andrea Jenkins put in a vote of no confidence. That's it. Is she one of the rooks or the knights or one of the pawns? Because evidently they have done nothing to rebel against Rishi Sunak. Maybe it will take time, but evidently no one stood in the way to protect Suella Braverman. These people talked a big game, done nothing, because the one thing they fear is having the whip removed from them. There was the theory that Sunak would not take any action until Wednesday, because that's when the Rwanda ruling would coming up. For Sunak to do this now possibly means he knows the ruling will be against the government. But it's very strange. There were so many different kind of leaks and briefings. We had no idea what was going on until eventually it happened. And if you want to see more of the briefing was, you had Kate McCann of the Times Radio being told that Number 10 had seen the piece that we cited earlier, and wanted some edits to be done, and it was done with those edits, right? And then she tweets later after that, Number 10 didn't technically sign off on the comment piece, although they did see it and offer edits. Sources also claim the Home Office did not accept the changes Number 10 had asked for. Hard to see where this leaves the Home Secretary. So I think she briefed the press to say, Sunak saw the article and the changes that were requested, we made it. And I think Sunak's team briefed the press saying, we had seen it, we had offered changes, and those changes were not made. And I would like to know what the changes were requested were. Probably the bit about hate marches. I don't know what else. Number 10 disavows Suella Braverman's article attacking police over protests. Embarrassing behaviour. There's just so much more, weak Rishi Sunak should sack Braverman now, Tory ministers have said. So there was a lot of internal pressure on Rishi Sunak to sack her. But grassroots Conservatives say Braverman's a real contender for the Conservative leadership amid ongoing anger over her hardline rhetoric. So this is the reason why he kept her on for so long, because she's a potential challenger. But it's hard to know. She might just fade into the backbenches. We don't know. There is a budget coming up, a budget vote. She might lead a rebellion on that with Liz Truss, but it's hard to say for sure. Again, just more ministers just endlessly being asked questions about, do you back Suella Braverman? And they just didn't give an answer. Just endless waffle in a lot of these clips. I don't want to play too many of them because this video will go on for too long. But, they were asked, do you have confidence in Braverman? And they just didn't want to answer it. They just hid behind Rishi Sunak. Here we have a bunch of goons on the cenotaph. They moaned about having to wear masks, but here they are. And just them getting to fights with the police. Oh, didn't want to play it. It's a bit loud. Apologies. Here they are getting into fights with police. These brave patriots that are meant to protect the cenotaph getting into scraps with the police. What's that about? There's more footage of it. It's just them getting into scraps with the police. So this is a deleted tweet. Sunak's patience with Suella was wearing thin. Number 10 whips have received a lot of complaints from Conservative MPs, and would be an understatement. A senior Tory tells me that was before her Times piece, because she hasn't achieved a lot. Again, all she does is talk about immigration, talk about small boats, talk about censorship and all these other issues, right? But she's done nothing to actually deal with those issues. Nothing. All she does is talk. That's all she is. Because that's all they know, is to talk about issues, to keep them going for as long as possible, so that the public focuses on these issues that aren't ultimately that important. The government set to, they did the war on homelessness as well. Suella Braverman talking about taking away tents from people, even though the only way to really do this is to try and give people housing. That's the only way to actually resolve this issue. Okay, another one that's gone. Suella Braverman, the political genius she is, apparently told Rishi Sunak that the only way to save the Tories is a snap election on small boats. And I guarantee you, I don't think a lot of the public will be concerned by small boats. What they'll be concerned about is the cost of living crisis, especially as we go into winter, where the energy bills are going to go up again. I don't think the concern is going to be on small boats. So for this article to be published by Dan Hodges, and for Suella Braverman to have apparently said this, it genuinely shows you how much of a political lightweight she is. Or the fact that she just wants to take over as party as leader of the opposition, which again, I don't know why you would want to be a party that's going to be in long-term opposition. What do you hope to achieve by that? Maybe she'll build connections, I don't know, but given Labour have taken a lot of the business donations, or a significant amount of them, away from the Conservative Party, I don't know what she expects to be as leader of the opposition, of a weakened and broken Conservative Party. I don't get it. This is Sunak's statement where he talks about the EDL thugs And he talks about the chants that were done. He talks about people being pro-Hamas, etc., and kind of conflates the two with each other. I hope the Met Police does find anyone guilty of breaking any crimes at these protests. The fact that people have gone to protests and have done stupid stuff like this, all you do is hurt the cause if you are pro-Palestinian. Rachel Sharby tweeting out, far right reliably proving that they are always going to be far more of a hate-fueled threat to safety than a Palestinian solidarity march calling for a ceasefire, which is true. The far right will always be more dangerous than 95% of groups that aren't terrorists, honestly. But regardless of all of that, I think it's worth saying that we're smoking that Braverman pack. We got that Richie Sunak pack because Sunak took forever to sack her, and he looks incredibly weak right now. So we're going to light one up. Because I don't smoke, but this is the closest I'll get to it. But yeah, light one up for this lot, because honestly, they got packed up through their own stupidity. They got absolutely packed up. So I'm going to play this again, and remember to like, comment, share, subscribe, support the channel on Patreon if you can, and here's Venom Snake one more time.